On Friday evening at approximately 7:30 p.m., I made a visit to Toby's Bar and Grill. I was completely exhausted after spending the previous 2 days in New York City, finalizing negotiations with a major international bank. At the start of the day, I held a pessimistic outlook on the possibility of reaching an agreement. However, it appeared that the unresolved obstacles began to resolve themselves one after another, like a chain reaction of falling dominoes, shortly after our meeting commenced on Friday. By noon, only 2 remaining stumbling blocks stood in our way. We collectively decided to take a break and have lunch. I located the nearest Jewish deli and indulged in a sinfully large pastrami and Swiss cheese sandwich on rye bread, relishing every single bite. When we reconvened at 1:30, George Willis, the lead negotiator from the bank, expressed his satisfaction with the enormous progress we had made. He proposed splitting the difference on the last 2 points. George passed the paper across the conference table, and I carefully read through his proposal. Although the split was not entirely equal, it fell comfortably within the boundaries of what my partners and I could accept in order to secure this significant contract. I swiftly initialed the page, and George assured me that he would email the official contract on Monday. After exchanging handshakes, we went our separate ways. I returned to my hotel, packed my belongings, and completed the checkout process. Initially, I contemplated staying in town for the night since my fiancée Trish was away for the weekend with her 2 older sisters, who had planned a visit to one of Connecticut's renowned Indian casinos. Their itinerary included days spent at the pool and spa, and evenings at the finest bars and restaurants. However, instead of spending another night away from home, I made my way to Grand Central Station and boarded the Metro North train to New Haven. By 7:30, I found myself on I-91, heading towards Hartford. As I exited the highway, I passed through the always bustling downtown West Hartford, where I decided to stop for dinner. It was at Toby's Bar that I noticed my 2 future daughters-in-law entering the establishment, settling down at a horseshoe-shaped table. Their husbands joined them shortly after. The immediate knot in my stomach and the agony that seemed to radiate through every fiber of my being indicated that my wedding plans, which were precisely 8 weeks away, were in jeopardy. My sisters-in-law were supposed to be accompanying Trish to the casino. I departed from the bar, dialed Trish's number, and she answered, greeting me with, "Hello, my love." She inquired about the bustling city, to which I replied that everything remained as usual. Trish informed me of the successful negotiations she had completed and mentioned her upcoming dinner plans. Oh, how I yearned for her presence by my side. In response, I affectionately called her cute and expressed my longing for her as well. Trish then shared the delightful time they had spent throughout the day, lounging by the pool and indulging in refreshing beverages. I mentioned the pleasant atmosphere of the pre-wedding town. I informed Trish that I would be meeting my sisters for dinner shortly. We exchanged a few more words of affection before bidding each other farewell with, "I love you." Curiosity led me to check the Find My Phone app and input Trish's details. Uncertain of Trish's whereabouts, I discovered that her phone was located in Falmouth, Massachusetts, on the western edge of Cape Cod. A realization struck me as I recalled that Trish's longtime neighbor and friend, Nick Flaherty, owned a family home in Falmouth. We had been invited there on multiple occasions. Perusing my contact list, I found Sue Flaherty's phone number and dialed it. Sue answered the call, pleasantly surprised to hear from me. I introduced myself as Chris Harrington and inquired about the progress of the wedding plans. Sue and Nick expressed their eagerness for the upcoming festivities. However, I confessed my uncertainty regarding the current state of the plans. Sue chuckled, attributing it to a typical male reaction. I then asked Sue if Nick had gone on a trip over the weekend. She found the question peculiar as Nick rarely traveled on weekends, but confirmed that he was indeed away this time. Concern laced her voice as she asked what was wrong. I cautiously mentioned the Find My Phone application and asked if she had it on her phone. Sue's response was a sob, followed by a whispered admission that not again had this happened. A minute later, she continued, revealing that Nick should have been in Philadelphia, but the beacon indicated his presence at the family's cottage. With a heavy sigh, Sue began to cry once again, her sobs interrupting her words. She reassured me, saying, "Chris, it's not your fault. In an attempt to seek assistance, I made a call to Billy Jones, a close friend and neighbor. "Billy, can I ask for your help? Will you be available tomorrow morning?" I inquired. Billy responded, "My only plans are to sleep until noon, but Sally will wake me up at 7. What do you need, my friend?" I explained my request, asking him to change the locks on my front door, the door leading out of the garage, and to modify the code on his garage door opener. I expressed my gratitude for his assistance. There was a brief moment of silence before Billy exclaimed, "Oh no, does this mean the wedding is canceled?" Realizing the gravity of the situation, he added, "Unless there's something crucial I'm missing, Trish and I are done for." Understanding his concern, I assured him, "Yes, Billy, that's correct. Thank you for understanding and for helping me." Feeling the weight of the situation, I wearily made my way back to Toby's and approached the bar. As I caught a glimpse of my daughters-in-law and their husbands in the mirror, I couldn't help but feel a sense of aging. The waiter cleared their appetizers as I settled onto a bar stool and approached my former future family's table with my drink in hand. Taking a seat at the end of the table, I stared intently between Julie and Karen, creating an icy atmosphere. Steve, Karen's husband, attempted to lighten the mood, saying, "Chris, buddy, come over here, take a look at the menu." Without diverting my gaze from the women, I replied, "No, thank you, Steve. I won't be staying long." I continued to maintain my silence, fixating my gaze on Julie and Karen until Roy, Julie's husband, finally asked, "What's happening, Chris? Can you shed some light on this?" In response, I simply gestured towards their wives and said, "Ask your wife." Roy and Steve turned their attention towards their respective spouses, seeking answers. It was evident that both women were extremely frightened. Steve inquired about the situation, asking the sisters what was happening. Karen was the first to speak, stating that it wasn't what Chris thought. However, I believed that it was exactly what he thought. As tears streamed down Karen's face, Steve and Roy glanced from their wives to me. Steve asked once again, demanding to know what was going on. I explained to Chris that his wives were covering for Trish. They had all been together in my kitchen last Tuesday because I was going to be out of town until Sunday. They had planned to go to Foxwoods Casino for the weekend. Roy questioned the sisters about Trish's whereabouts. When they remained silent, he turned to me. I informed him that she was at Nick's house on Cape Cod. Steve confirmed that this was true. At that moment, both women were crying. Karen nodded in agreement, while Julie sobbed and expressed that Trish truly loved Chris. Steve rolled his eyes in disbelief, and Roy stared at the tabletop. He remarked that Trish had a peculiar way of showing her love, as she and her sisters were lying to him, and she was going away with the older neighbor for a weekend of sexual indulgence just 8 weeks before their wedding. Roy sternly warned his wife not to speak further. He then turned to me and inquired about my plans. I firmly stated that I would cancel the wedding, of course. Both friends leaned back in their chairs while their wives continued to cry even harder. Karen sobbed, mentioning that her father had spent a significant amount of money on the wedding and reception. However, I remained resolute, stating that I didn't care. I refused to marry a deceitful, unfaithful woman like Trish. After a brief pause, I revealed that we had spoken to Sue Flaherty about Nick's infidelity with Trish. We had decided to confront them within 24 hours and expose their actions. As 4 pairs of eyes focused on me, I turned to Roy and Steve, seeking their assistance. I asked if they could ensure that their wives didn't contact Trish before 6:15 tomorrow evening. Both women began to protest, but Steve assured me that they could indeed fulfill that request. He then turned to his wife, expressing his disappointment and questioning whether her sisters had ever supported her while she cheated on him. Karen was taken aback by his words, and Steve proceeded, "If either you or Julie become involved with Trish in any manner, I will contemplate initiating divorce proceedings." Roy's face turned crimson with fury. His words elicited a groan from Julie. Unfortunately, as he mentioned, given the issues we faced at the start of our 3rd year of marriage, I could have pursued a divorce regardless. However, rest assured, if you make contact with Trish, I will definitely proceed with the application. I shook hands with both men and exited the restaurant. Saturday was a busy day. It took me several hours to eliminate any remaining traces of Trish from our house. Instead of stacking filled garbage bags in the driveway, I rented a small storage unit, and borrowed my neighbor Billy's pickup truck. It only took 3 trips to transport all the bags to the warehouse. The most challenging part was composing the letter to our wedding guests. I worked on the email in intervals throughout the day. The subject line read, Harrington and Clark Wedding Update. Dear friends, I am currently halfway through planning my wedding, just 8 short weeks away from the big day with Trish Clark. The weekend was extraordinary because I discovered that Trish spent her time in another man's bed. Trish and her longtime neighbor, Nick Flaherty, betrayed me and Nick's wife, Sue, with the assistance of Trish's sisters, Karen and Julie, and their deceit. The couple spent the weekend together at Cape Cock Odd. You may wonder why I find this reprehensible behavior impressive. The reason is simple. I am not married to Trish. It is much easier to call off a wedding than to endure the pain of a divorce. This letter serves as my official notification that I am canceling my wedding to Trish Clark. Sincerely, Christopher Harrington. I phoned Sue Flaherty at 5:30 on a Saturday afternoon. Together, we shared updates on the tasks we were able to accomplish. Due to Sue's marital status, it was much more challenging for her to end things with Nick. She managed to consult with a lawyer and had an appointment scheduled for Monday morning. The lawyer advised canceling joint credit cards and separating finances as much as possible. This was the standard legal advice given in the event of a divorce. Our call concluded a few minutes prior to 6 p.m., and we agreed to send a message to our respective partners at 6 a.m. sharp. My message simply conveyed my hope that they would enjoy their weekend with Nick. I also expressed gratitude for revealing their true nature as a liar and a cheat. Furthermore, I informed them that our wedding had been called off. I promptly sent the message at exactly 6 p.m., followed by an email to our family and guests. 16 months later, I stood at the altar with my best man and groomsmen by my side. The bridesmaids looked stunning as they gracefully walked down the center aisle of the church. Tears welled up in my eyes as I gazed towards the back of the church. Trish's father stood proudly, dressed in his black tuxedo. His eyes, like mine and those of our guests, were fixated on the most beautiful bride in the world. Her blonde hair was elegantly styled and looked radiant beneath the delicate white veil. Her blue eyes sparkled with love, while her dark red lips hinted at the passionate thoughts of our upcoming wedding night. The fitted white wedding dress accentuated her heavenly figure without appearing inappropriate. It was truly magnificent. As Mr. Clark and my fiancé proceeded down the aisle towards me, I felt a piercing gaze upon me. I glanced at the guests on my side of the church before turning my attention to the bride's side. That's when I caught sight of Trish. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she quietly uttered, "I'm sorry," before turning to her father and younger sister, who were making their way towards me. Please subscribe to our channel to ensure that your second chef remains faithful. Additionally, feel free to listen to the next story, as it surpasses the current one in every aspect. However, if you are under 18, I strongly advise against listening to the upcoming story.